For a portion of the ordinance, state law provides for an avenue of appeals, hence name Zoning Board of Appeals. Zoning Board must find that 4 conditions exist in reviewing an application in order to grant the variance. If all 4 conditions are met, the board can grant approval for a variance from the ordinance. The 4 conditions that must be met are: 1, extraordinary or exceptional circumstances which apply to this parcel alone. 2, preservation of rights that a similar zone parcel would have. 3, no detriment to adjacent properties. 4, the request is not in such a general nature that the ordinance should be changed. Unlike a decision by the Planning Commission that must be approved or can be overturned by the City Commission, the decision by the Zoning Board of Appeals is final. There is no review or opportunity for overturning by the City Commission. The Zoning Enabling Act provides a section 606 Appendix 3. An appeal from a decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals shall be filed within 30 days after the Zoning Board of Appeals issues its decision in writing, signed by the chairperson, if there is a chairperson, or signed by members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, if there is no chairman, or within 21 days after the Zoning Board of Appeals approves the minutes of its decision. The court may affirm, reverse, or modify the decision by the Zoning Board of Appeals. The court may other orders as justice requires. Okay. We need to have some minutes approved from November the 14th. Is that correct?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Motion by Scott, supported by Brian. Any additions or deletions or comments on the minutes before I call for a vote? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. The minutes are approved. We have a general public comment section. This provision is made to encourage the expression of questions and concerns regarding non-public hearing items and issues not on the agenda. Speakers are asked to identify themselves by name and address. A maximum time of 6 minutes per person is required.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
if I could jump in, if nobody's got any general public
Yep.
comments from the
Yep.
audience.
Yep.
2 announcements. One is, I think you have all heard by now, but before you speak tonight, if you can just press the button on your microphone, that'll turn it red, and it'll be good to go. The second announcement is you see a new face here tonight. This is Andrea Hendrick. She is our Planner 1 and CDD specialist hired in December. So after our last meeting, Andrea comes to us with a broad planning background. She's worked with Talmadge Township, Grand Rapids, so she's got a lot of experience in planning and zoning, but will also be doing a lot of the administrative work Tammy had been doing. Tammy hasn't disappeared. She's over in Public Works now, so feel free to swing in and say hello to Tammy whenever you're around as well.
Cool.
Thanks.
Glad you have aboard. Welcome. Okay. First thing we have on our agenda is 3960 Remembrance Road, Walker Auto Service. The applicant hereby requests permission to maintain roughly 600 square foot of automotive repair business with 9 off the street parking spaces, plus 2 dealer display parking places. Let's get my tongue straightened out here in a minute. Where 18 spaces are required under section 94-467. The above is contrary to the Walker City of Ordinance, section 94-467. The address is 3960 Remembrance Road. Property owner's name is Thomas Rodenhouse. Property owner's address is 14955 Bloom Road, Spring Lake. Applicant's name is Luke Rodenhouse. Applicant's address is 1873 Riley Street, Hudsonville, Michigan. Zoning district is C3, use of existing premises auto repair. Use of proposed premises, the same. Previous appeals, 11/8 of 79. Applicant states, under reasons and grounds to support the variance, exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. Applicant states, due to angle of the intersection of Kenny Street and Remembrance Road, the parking lot at 3960 Remembrance Road, hence Walker Auto Service, has a triangular shaped and does not allow for the allocated 20 parking spots. Preservation of rights. Two businesses near the same intersection of Remembrance and Kenny also have odd-shaped lots with inadequate parking spaces, yet one has a dealer's license pro collision and the other, Bergman Power Company equipment, is also outside sales. No detriment. Applicant states, all vehicles will be parked in proper parking spaces and kept off any grass areas and public right-of-ways. 4, not a general problem. Applicant states, for the general regulation update, the property of 3960 Remembrance Road would still require a variance for parking spots. Okay, we have 2 requests on this, correct? One is for parking and the other one is for judge similar use.
That's
For
right.
the second business for selling of cars, right? Or license.
Yes.
In there, okay? Do we handle this all in one deal or we need to do it separately?
We'll have 2 different motions, and I can introduce kind of both aspects of the case
Okay.
together.
All right.
They were noticed together
Yep.
for this meeting under one public hearing, but we'll have 2 motions at the end.
Okay.
So the judge similar aspect is for the idea that there's going to be limited, occasional vehicles on the site that will be transferred and sold.
All right. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Sandra,
I'll support that.
supported by Patrick. All those in favor of opening the hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The hearing is now open. Anything you want to add right now, Dan?
Sure. Let me run through some slides and give a little bit of background on why we're here and what the 2 requests are. And that'll frame up my thoughts on the request for my recommendations in the report you received. So there's not a significant land use aspect to this request. This isn't a new site. They're not proposing to change really any of the site or the building substantially. So where we are is we're looking at this proposal to transfer a used car license, a Class B dealer license from the state of Michigan, and in addition to the existing minor automotive repair use that's been on the site for decades. This used vehicle dealer license prompts some scrutiny because you think outdoor auto sales, you think used car sales lot, and that's been made clear that that's not what this is. This is not going to be a place where there's regular automotive sales or a very visible auto sales area. To my understanding, is the occasional parking of vehicles that will end up being sold, housed under a dealer license that the applicant has formerly held in Holland where he owns a business. He's looking to transfer that here as that business is closing or he's having to vacate that license in Holland. So when you look at something like this, the first thing I asked was, is the use of having vehicles, even if they're limited automotive sales, authorized under Walker's zoning ordinance? If it's a clear yes, that makes it a lot easier. It's a simple addition of a permitted use on the site. If it's a clear no, there'd be a use variance that would be requested or a rezoning And in that case, you'd say no to that question if it was something that was point blank, auto sales, flags and streamers, stickers on the cars. If you have something where there's very occasional transfer and parking or storage of vehicles that'll end up being sold, that's where there's kind of a gray area in what the C3 zoning allows. So that zoning district allows the zoning board of appeals to say, is this similar to the other permitted uses in that zone district? So that's why, in terms of framing up and defining the use, that's the first request. Is this limited scope of vehicle parking and potential sales similar to the other uses permitted in this zone district, and will this be compatible with the zone district and the surrounding properties? That particular application is found on pages 15 to 16 of your packet because it kind of came in separately. Looks like this. And then when you look at the second request, and the order of these two might be different in the motion. The second request might be number one. But the other request is that you're adding a use to the site where there's already a capacity issue, basically. So we have the need when you're adding a use to a site to check out whether the site can withstand the use from a zoning standpoint. Does it meet all of the zoning ordinance requirements to house what's there now and what's going to be there? In this case, we're a little short on parking because we have minimum zoning standards for the layout of a parking lot in terms of you have to have a 26-foot wide two-way traffic aisle for a conventional, 90-degree parking space parking lot. You have to have parking spaces that are basically 9 by 18 for your standard parking spots, and one space is required per 200 square feet of floor area in an auto repair site. So that leaves you with 18 spaces required in a building that's somewhere between 3,500 and 3,600 square feet. And the way that this kind of maths out on a site plan is, on a scaled survey drawing, is that there's really only room for about 12 spaces. And so that's where we have this shortfall of parking to accommodate the occasional vehicles for sale and the automotive repair, regular traffic in terms of employees, customers, cars being staged. So the application is, it's kind of a tailored application drawing that goes with this, because we're looking at when we max out the site, when we scale out what those zoning requirements are, this is where the parking can go legally. So this is this was what was kind of requested in the application form, cleaned up a little bit. This is a template made by me that was signed off on by the applicant when he drew over it, just to kind of frame up your review and give some scale to what's being proposed. You see 11 spaces on here, including one barrier-free space right by the front door. I think you can technically fit up to 12 depending on where you put that barrier-free space. And so this is kind of the layout that's being proposed. When you look at the orientation of the site, just to give you a little bit of background and a little bit of history, the building was built in 1950. There was an addition in 1970. The variance you referred to was for another addition in 1980. There was a setback variance that was required for that. So that's just a little bit of site history. What you see there now is the longstanding Walker Auto Service business. It looks a little different on any given day, but here are a couple of site photos. You may drive by this site on the way to the meeting. It's right there at Kinney and Remembrance. So this just gives you a little perspective of how the business lays out as it is right now, where the cars are parked, and how it lines up with that kind of irregular corner of Kinney and Remembrance on the southeast side there. The future land use and zoning for this site call for commercial. So we have a what's called a village commercial future land use, and then there's the C3 outdoor commercial, highway commercial zoning, which calls for basically anything other than your large box stores and other than outdoor intensive uses like a car sales lot or a gas station where you have almost all the activity outside. So jumping into the findings of fact, I think when you're trying to figure out how to define the use, I think the biggest things are to understand whether, in terms of whether the use is similar to what's permitted. The things you want to look at are whether the use will bring a level of traffic to the site, and a level of parking demand which exceeds the existing use patterns, whether there's going to be any significant change to hours of operation or external noise or external light compared to what's already allowed in C3, whether the exterior of the site will visibly change in terms of comparing to what was there in the past, and that there will be sufficient limits on vehicle sales and display. And I think this is the biggest one. My understanding from the applicant is there won't be big signs, there won't be stickers on the cars, there won't be a lot of visual clutter related to the car sales. These will be very occasional, limited storage of vehicles, roughly once a month, somewhere thereabouts. And especially in terms of what's actually visibly for sale. And there may be 1 or 2 spaces devoted to this regular transfer of vehicles otherwise. When we get into the parking variance aspect of this, we focus more on the capacity of the parking lot itself for adding a couple of spaces for these cars that'll be sold in addition to the regular patrons, employees, and repaired vehicles. The irregular shape of the lot is mentioned in the application. I agree with that. It's a triangular property. It's kind of difficult to build out more parking surface in a lot like that, especially with the building already being standing there. Kind of the long-standing building imposes limits for new uses on the site and new parking areas. When you look at the preservation of rights, this is where you say, is there a similar use in a similar zone district where there's a parking shortfall and there's been some sort of an approval from the city related to that. So the one example I give in my report is Pro Collision, which was also the recipient of a different type of variance request. They have a pretty substantial major automotive repair facility where they do more body work. That's still going to trigger the same parking demand, and yet they have only 13 striped spaces. They might have room for a couple more in the back. But that's a pretty significant shortfall, and you might consider whether that impacts their their site's operation and whether that can be compared to this site. And I think it can. I think in this site we still have about 2/3 of the required parking capacity is available on the site. The third one is the no detriment. I think this is the biggest one, even though I have the least information on slides about this one. The obvious detriment of just not providing enough surface for parking is that you can have cramming of vehicles, a difficult area to maneuver, especially emergency vehicles, blocking driveways and stacking onto the rights of way. That's never a good thing. So what I want to make sure of is that any consideration of approval here requires that the applicant keeps those 26-foot wide aisles clear. There's sort of an exhibit drawing that shows how this would lay out if areas where you have to turn a vehicle and maneuver are kept clear from cars that are regularly parked, and kind of the areas in white are okay, except for the building, of course. The areas in red really should not be parked on. So I think that if you can get into a layout where you keep those aisles clear, you commit to keeping those 12 roughly parking spaces striped, then you can verify that there's no detriment to the property from a public safety standpoint. I will talk about this in a more specific list of recommendations at the end here, which is coming up shortly. There's also the criterion of no general regulation or not a general problem. That's where we say, is this something that, should we really loosen up our parking standards? I don't think this unique case should really lead us to doing an ordinance amendment for parking. I think our parking standards are fairly modernized and work for most sites, so I don't think there's a need to use this case as a prompt for an ordinance update on parking. So my recommendations are that the ZBA can review this case, debate the facts, talk to the applicant. You can conditionally approve, deny, or table the request if you'd like. My recommendations are that there are a lot of spatial items in my recommendations that can be adopted by the ZBA, and I think there's enough in this list to go off of in combination with the drawing that was put together. In the past, the ZBA has occasionally asked for a site plan review as a condition of an approval. You could do that as well. I think in this case, there's enough on the drawing that was provided that you can say, here's the drawing you need to adhere to. You need to keep these areas clear and stick to this list. So that would be my recommendation. Here's the list. So no long-term outdoor vehicle storage beyond what you'd normally see for what's called minor automotive repair. So nothing that's there for more than a couple of days. At the very most, preferably not overnight, but generally no long-term outdoor vehicle storage. Adhere to the layout that you keep 26-foot wide aisles clear and suitable parking spaces, meaning roughly 18 by 9 parking spaces. No more than 12 spaces should be parked, no more than 12 vehicles should be parked for any long duration of time other than perhaps occasional staging adjacent to the building. No more than 2 spaces should be used for automotive display in terms of being clearly for sale on the site. And on that note, anything that's clearly advertised with any stickers or anything of that nature where it's visible from the public right-of-way should be limited to 1 business day per month. And no building addition or change inside the building should be done, for example, having say an eatery or something that would bring even more traffic to the site without going through a planning commission or ZBA review first. Or there should also be no additions to the building without an additional ZBA review. So it's kind of a long list, but I think that it links up with the drawing that's in your packet. And if you can work through those facts, I think that you can make a case that this use would be similar to what's already permitted in that zone district or what's been approved in the past. And there's enough to tie the applicant back to in terms of enforceability in the future.
Dan, did you go over these recommendations with the applicant here?
I've had a number of discussions with the applicant, and yes, he got the packet last week. We had a couple of phone calls since then.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if we went through bullet by bullet, but
Okay.
we've talked about the case since then.
Okay, just so he's aware of what's recommended. Okay, applicant, would you have anything you'd like to add at this time? Yeah, you gotta push the red button, yeah.
Not much. Once again, my name's Luke Rodenhouse. I'm Walker Auto Service. Dan covered it quite a bit. Dan and I have had a lot of conversation in regards to this. I think starting back mostly in October, but all the way back to over a year ago. This is something that we've been talking about in depth. He's been to my location several times. So the biggest issue, or my biggest concern, is I do have a dealer license. It is out at my car lot out in Holland. I'm looking to move that over here, but my primary focus is wholesaling cars, not necessarily retailing cars. So for me, potentially I would go to an auction, buy a car that needs repairs, and then taking it back to the auction and selling cars that way. So I don't need a lot of cars out for sale. I don't need, to display, big signs and bulletins and flags all over the place. I'm just looking to move my license to this location so I can continue to buy and sell cars, like I said, on a wholesale basis, and on occasion selling a car to someone that potentially is looking to purchase a car or contacts me and say, hey Luke, I potentially would like to buy a car, can you facilitate the transaction? So that's really in general what I'm looking to do. And like I said, but I think Dan pretty much touched on everything that we've discussed in depth. So
Okay.
That's all I have to add, I guess.
Okay. Well, if we have any questions here, pretty soon we'll call on you. Anybody else in the audience care to speak to this variance? You need to step to the microphone. State your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Bob Stevens, a Walker Barber Stylist, 3969 Remembrance Road, right across from Auto Body. I've been there 50 years and watched this building. When I came, it was vacant. It had been at a mobile station. Windows were busted out. It had various rentals for a period of time. And I've watched Luke's family improve the building over the years tremendously and made a very added attraction to the neighborhood, which we all try to do. And I think they've done a fine job of that. And I'm totally in support of what Luke's trying to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Used to be Jack-a-Locks gas station. Is there? Jack-a-Locks.
I knew it was a gas station.
There you go. That's who owned it.
My name is Vaughn Stevens, owner of Rodenhouse Body Shop, which is basically kitty corner from Walker Auto Service. I actually worked in that building where Walker Auto Service was, or is right now, for just about 20 years. So I've known Luke his whole life. I think he's probably, it's in the whole corner's best interest that he's able to do this, because I think he's going to be able to clean up the lot if you guys, set forth the rules and stuff. I'm sure he will follow them, and he's just very honest in what he said. He's more of a wholesaler than he is a retailer. So I'm at that building every day. I very, very seldom have ever seen, and I know it's against the zoning ordinance anyways, that he has cars out front for sale with signs in them and flags and everything else. So I totally believe that Luke's going to follow the rules. I totally support what he wants to do here. And I think he is he's limited in what he can do, not only from the addition or the improvements that have been made on that corner in the last 50 years. And since 1980, when his father put the addition on the back and added more square footage. So I think the addition, improvements on that corner have probably really limited his space for parking too. So I'm totally in support of this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, right.
Yeah, my name's Walt Reichert. I live at 1938 Kenny Road. Been married there. I've been there 51 years, and I have no problem with it. I mean, it's not going to be any different than what it is right now. So, and Luke's a nice guy.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'll close the public comment and turn it over to the board for questions from the applicant. So you might have to step back up, look to the microphone. Anybody have a question for the applicant?
How many vehicles do you have in there right now?
Right now, before I left today, I think I had 8 outside. Yeah, 7 or 8 before I left just today. So, I mean, that can fluctuate depending on the day. One of the days that Dan came down to my shop was the day before Thanksgiving, and on that particular day, we had, more cars than I probably want there, but everybody's going out of town, leaving for, Thanksgiving, and they wanted me to service their car, look at the car, make sure that their car is going to make it to, wherever they're intending on going. So depending on the day, it can fluctuate, but just tonight before I left, I think there were 7 or 8 cars on my outside on the actual parking lot.
So most of those cars along Kenny there are customers' cars?
Customers' cars.
Okay.
Most cars are there. I probably have 4 or 5 cars that are my cars that, we might be working on. Another place that I'm allowed to sell cars, and I don't know if you're familiar with, is Michigan Creditors, which is on the other side of Wilson. Mark Haskins is the owner there, and I can put cars, as many cars as I want to, if I wanted to, out for display there if I'd like to. So he's made many concessions for me to, if I feel like I have a few extra cars and I don't want at my location because we don't have the room, then I can certainly put them there until we get to time to work on them, or I can just put them out for sale up there.
Okay.
Because he has a broker's license.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Pretty quiet.
How many employees do you have, and where do they park?
Well, that's a good question, because I only have 1 employee, and he lives at one of my houses, which is right next door. So he parks at his house and he walks to work, and which is good in case he was ever late. I can go over to his house and knock on the door and say I need to get to work. But he lives right across the street from Vaughn's Body Shop, and he parks at his house and just walks to work. So, and it's just myself, and his name is Charlie. It's just the 2 of us.
Anyone
Is
else?
Charlie a nice guy too?
Charlie is a nice guy. He's expecting, he just recently married and now he's expecting a child, so but like I said, they live right next door.
Great, thanks.
Anyone else have a question from the applicant? Otherwise, I'm going to ask for a motion to close the hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Okay? Motion by Sandra. Do I hear support? Seconded by Brian. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It is closed. Now, if we want to talk about possible motion or any other addition between the commission, we can. We have recommendations here from our staff for possible guidelines for the motion. And I guess the applicant has been in contact with Dan on these, so he's familiar with most of what's going on with the motions or the conditions. We have the pictures here of the site. We went through all this, and basically pretty much thorough, I think, so. So.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, Sandra, go ahead.
I'm ready to make a motion. I make a motion to approve the request by the applicant, Mr. Luke Rodenhouse, the nice guy, to allow proposed limited vehicle display and sales use in addition to the 3,516 square foot minor automotive repair facility with space for only 9 off-street parking spaces. And the way that it was drawn up was, he was allowed to have 11 or 12 with the drawing that we had.
Right.
So, I want to continue that motion, but I also want to, include conditions, as Dan had mentioned to us before. Long-term outdoor vehicle storage should be prohibited. 26-foot wide aisle widths for vehicle maneuvering and adequate space dimensions. No more than 12 combined employee or for-sale vehicles to be parked on the site at any time, including proposed vehicles for sale and display. No more than 2 spaces should be used for automotive display. The display should be limited to 1 business day per month. No building addition or no change of use inside the building can be permitted, which increases the parking demand. The area west of the building may be used for temporary staging of vehicles in line for repair, but may not be used for patron parking or for sale or display of any vehicle. And that's my motion.
Okay. Sanders made the motion with those conditions. Anybody care to support that? Supported by Roger. Any other questions, additions, deletions to the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pull the same sign. It is granted with those conditions. And I need a signature here with Roger here in the green shirt right here. And we also need the second. You'll have, you can sign this one, then we'll go to the second one. You'll have to sign that one too, okay? All right, they are on the same sheet? Okay.
You're
Yes,
not-
we do. Yes, we do. Yeah, we gotta have a judge, a similar request, okay? Okay. And I went through the whole application. Basically, it's the same application.
I'll just, if I can just
Go
jump
ahead,
in
go
with
ahead.
an editorial comment. There's a lot of text in this motion where
Okay.
we're talking about compatibility with the intent of the zone district, and there's a pretty long description of the intent.
Okay.
I think you could just cut it off at the intent of this zone district and skip the rest of that paragraph if you're following along. the intent of, similar to the permitted principal uses in the C3 zone district and compatible with the intent of this zone district. That should cover it. So whoever's reading, cut out some verbiage there if you want to.
You want that as part of the motion, correct? All the
Yeah.
findings?
Yep, I'm just referring to that big paragraph after the first couple of lines there.
Okay. Go ahead. You want to make it?
I make a motion to approve the requested judgment that the following applies to the limited automotive display and sales associated with a vehicle dealer license. And then the paragraph that you wanted us to skip was the use under consideration by zoning board of appeals is similar to the permitted principal uses in the zone district and compatible with the intent of the zone district, which is to encourage the construction or continued use of land for commercial and service uses and to provide for orderly development and concentration of such uses to satisfy the needs of modern commercial development, where access is entirely dependent upon the automobile, and to provide suitable locations for such activities which function relatively independent of intensive pedestrian traffic and proximity to other firms.
Okay. There's motion supported by Roger. Any other questions or comments on the motion before I call for a vote? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, those, with that read out, have those conditions on it or findings, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. It is granted. So the signature you got both on both, you got to have another signature there, Roger? One more signature. Okay.
Thank you.
Good night. Yep. Okay. Now we go to okay, we have gonna get a little closer, right? All right. Okay. Okay, applicant hereby requests permission to build a 12-foot by 2-inch and 14 by 8-inch room on the back of our home, which the southeast corner is contrary to the City of Walker zoning ordinance. The above is contrary to the following section of the City of Walker zoning ordinance, section 94-188. Address is 3917 Hall Street Southwest. Property owner's name is John Starter, is that? What is it? Oh, Sartor, okay. And the address is 3917 Hall Street Southwest. Applicant's name and address is same as above. Zoning district is AA. Use of existing premises, single-family dwelling. Use of proposed premises, single-family dwelling. Previous appeals, none. Applicant states, exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. Topography limits the placement of the addition. The orientation of the home is on the usable part of the property due to the ravine location. The ravine covers over 60% of the lot, which limits the use of the available space to build 1.92 acres. Preservation of rights. Applicant states property at the address of 1258 White Pine Drive, Southwest, 1401 Maple Row Avenue, Northwest, was built in specific locations on their lots due to topography restrictions. Three, no detriment. Applicant states the proposed location will have the back corners of the addition at the 45.3 southeast corner and 52.2 northeast corners from the east property line due to topography and heavy woods. Neighbors will have limited to no view of the new structure. The east face backs up to the woods with no dwelling immediately behind it. 4, not a general problem. That the condition, there are no easements impact the proposed addition will conform to the plot restrictions, matching the architectural and finished home. The east face backs up to heavy wood area. We understand the need for control of dwelling location due to the setbacks and location of the home, shape of the lot and location and size of the ravine. We believe our situation is unique. Anything like that, Dan?
Sure. So sometimes there are reviews that are sort of zoning administrator assists, and there are ones that are building official assists that start with the building official just looking at what would normally be a regular old building permit application, and then he finds out this is a encroachment on a setback, and then it gets flagged to me and we send it to you. So this is what happened in this case. This is a homeowner who was looking to just put an addition onto the rear of their house, under 200 square foot room to the corner of their home. The building official found that this is going to jut slightly into that 50-foot rear yard setback. So as you just read, that's the nature of this case. I'll put some graphics to show you a little bit more about it and then explain my findings, which are pretty straightforward. Here's a survey of the house as it was built, plus the proposed addition. You can see the dimensions there, and then just a little sliver of the edge of that addition that would go into that 50-foot rear yard setback. Shown kind of in aerial view, seeing the tree cover on the property. You can see how it lays out there. This is what it would look like from an architectural standpoint, at least according to the building permit drawings we have, kind of copying the sunroom on the other side more or less. I believe the addition being proposed is the one on the left side of your screen because we're looking at the east elevation there. So here's the site. We're down in the 3rd Ward, Hall Street area, where you have a lot of kind of rolling hills and steep topography, obviously with the rolling hills. Some mature trees covering these lots. A lot of these properties were built into the tree cover, especially this one. You can see that they kind of found the high ground and built into that and protected a lot of the trees on the site. So when you get back onto the property, you're looking around and there's a pretty substantial tree buffer from the adjacent properties. Here's what the rear lot line looks like. So you can see the lines close together on the image to the right here mean that each of those lines is a foot slice of the earth, or maybe a 2-foot slice of the earth. So that means that you're dropping off pretty significantly around the home site. So the home was kind of built in the ideal site to save the grade and to save the trees there. So that kind of frames you up for why things were built where they are and why this variance is coming to light now. So the exceptional or extraordinary terrain of this property, I think, kind of speaks for itself with the images we just looked at. You have up to 30 feet of grade, and the applicant has some statements on the ravine coverage on the property as well. You have preservation of rights to consider in terms of whether similar properties in the same zone district in the vicinity have received variances similar to this one. We recently looked at a side yard variance request on Maple Row, which is not necessarily near this site, but it's a fairly similar property in terms of the scale of the residential building on the site. And that was a detached garage within 5 feet of the side lot line. They rebuilt there. Probably a more apples to apples comparison is on Riverbend. Back in 2016, we looked at an attached garage, ended up being built within 23 feet of the rear lot line. And I believe that was either suburban zoning or ag zoning, but either way, it was also a rear yard setback variance, kind of on a larger lot. When you look at no detriment, I want to just emphasize that you should consider the intent of this ordinance is going back to kind of why zoning was founded in the first place. You had, at one point, 100 years ago, really tall buildings in Manhattan that were too close together. They smelled and didn't let light through into the neighboring streetscapes and the buildings, and it caused a poor quality of life. So that's the root of setback variances. So what we want to get to in looking at the detriment of something like this is, does this impede the intent of having a 50-foot rear yard setback for open space and letting enough sunlight into the properties and giving people a sense of low-density residential quality of life? I certainly think that there's a case to be made. There is no detriment in that respect here because you have a lot of space between the adjacent properties in this addition, and still a lot of tree cover there. Finally, whether this is a general problem, should the ordinance be updated to lessen that rear yard setback in agricultural zoning? I don't think it should, for the reasons I just mentioned. I think a 50-foot rear yard setback is important for maintaining that visual and quality of life aspect of agriculturally zoned properties. This is a unique enough case that I think it should stand on its own merits, and we shouldn't update the ordinance for it. So my recommendation is that an approval or a conditional approval is acceptable. The only condition I would have put on this was that whatever is installed there should be compatible with the rest of the home structure from an architectural standpoint, and they've indicated that it will be.
Okay.
I think those are all the comments I have.
Okay.
Question for you.
Sure.
Since there were no previous appeals on this,
Yep.
how do we get a shed in the front yard?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this house was built in the mid-90s, late 90s, 95. And there was a small shed that's out in front of the home. And it's, I think, under 200 square feet, so it wouldn't have required a building permit. We later had another review for another addition, I think in mid-2000s, late 2000s. So we've had another review of that shed, and there was no consideration at that time that would have been something that triggered a variance request. Yeah. But if that was to come in today, I think the newest accessory building rules we have say, push comes to shove, even your small accessory building should be on the rear yard of the property. As that was constructed when the home was constructed, the ordinance may have been interpreted a little differently there, but that's certainly not a new proposed shed.
You're right. Yeah.
Like this.
Yep.
Okay. Anything the applicant would like to add at this time? Got to push the red button.
Good evening. John Sartor, owner applicant, 3917 Hall Street Southwest. I think Dan's done a spectacular job of putting the facts together. The only thing I'll add is just to reiterate that that addition will have the exact same architecture. It's got the same windows, the same doors, the same siding, the same shingles. My intent is that it looks like it belongs there. And if you've got any questions, go ahead and fire away.
Oh. Need a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open the public
Okay,
hearing.
motion by Scott, Layer support.
Support.
Okay, supported by Randy. All in favor of opening the hearing, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, the hearing is open. Okay. Turn it over to, anybody else want to speak to this variance before we go on to the board? Anyone else, you want to speak to the variance? Yeah, if you do, you got to. No, you got to go to the microphone. You got to go to the microphone for me. Name and address for the record. There you go.
There it is.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm Julian Arizola at 3895 Hall Street. I'm right behind John. around the corner, and I agree with it. I think Dan has been thorough in his findings, and as far as the shed is where it belongs now, I guess. The deck and the building that he's attaching to it, that's all, I think, falls in within the rules. And he's a great neighbor, so why mess with it?
Okay, all right.
I was just here just in case somebody else was going to speak against. So, thanks, guys.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're probably going to have you stand up there to the mic, because there might have some questions here from the board from you, okay? Thank you. Any questions from the applicant, from the board? What's this room for? What are you going to use the room for?
So this is really a three-seasons porch.
Okay.
I live in the woods.
Uh-huh.
Mosquitoes. So this is a screened-in area.
Okay.
That's its primary purpose. Its
Okay.
only purpose. Right?
All right, okay. Just curious, that's all.
I'm very familiar with your property. You live in my neighborhood, or I live in your neighborhood as well. So, and I know how the topography does take a dive in the backyard. So you're kind of limited where you can go. So,
Super, thanks.
Okay, any other questions from the applicant, from the board? Hearing none, I'll have somebody entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Sandra to close the hearing.
Second.
Oh, Randy, seconded. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The hearing is closed. Now the board can review the application and proceed with the motion. I guess the only thing that he wanted to do, or Dan wanted to do, is make sure that it's had the same architect and same finish as the present building, which I'm sure the applicant's gonna do, but he'd like to have that on, so. Make that part of the motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the request by the applicant to build the 181 square foot addition to the rear of the home, which extends to within roughly 45 feet of the rear lot line, contrary to section 94-188 of the Walker zoning ordinance, which requires a 50-foot rear yard setback regarding the 3917 Hall Street property. For all the reasons and grounds as discussed here, with the condition that the addition will architecturally and aesthetically match the rest of the house.
Okay. Anyone care to support the motion? Support by Roger. Any other questions or additions on the motion before I call for a vote? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion with those conditions, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Granted. So I need a signature with Roger here in a green shirt. Thank you.
I didn't notice that, Randy.
What?
You didn't have it.
They're on my desk at home.
Okay, we got some business we have to attend to. We need to do some election of officers or positions to the zoning board of appeals. It's that time of year. Yeah, we do it every year, don't we? Yeah, do it every year. So, we need to appoint the secretary of the board, recording secretary.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Roger.
Okay, that's a nomination.
Second.
Okay. Any other nominations before I call for a vote? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and now we have the vice chair position.
I'll nominate Brian.
Okay, yeah. Tom nominates Brian.
I'll support.
Huh? Support Sandra, okay. Any other nominations? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It is approved. Now we have the chairperson.
Make a motion to nominate Bob.
Okay, do I hear support?
Support.
Supported by Brian. Do we have any other nominations from the floor? Right here.
Yeah.
Brian? Oh, Brian.
You got your paperwork?
Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? It is approved. Now, we have anything coming up, Dan?
We do. We're going to meet on January 23rd, and we'll be going over 2 variance requests. There's going to be a request by an industrial site on Waldorf to have a small sign on the side of their building. And how many of you live near Kinney and Remembrance? No. Randy, are you east of Kinney? West of Kinney?
South of Remember.
Yeah, so are you familiar with the Central Place project? Does that ring a bell? Okay, well, I'll give you some more context in a couple weeks. There's a teaser for you. So there's a proposal by a few landowners surrounding a about 10-acre vacant parcel. That parcel had been proposed for a pretty extensive development project in the last couple of years. Now a few of the landowners nearby are proposing to buy up some of that property and basically keep it from development. But in doing so, there are 3 properties that would be kind of irregularly shaped, that long and narrow shape that triggers the 4-to-1 violation that we sometimes look at. So we'll be assessing that 4-to-1 rule for those property owners. My only other update was going to be that we have a new series of trainings and workshops from the Michigan Association of Planning. So I'll be sure to post those on the follow-up email tomorrow, a link to the brochure. So
Where they have those at, Dan? Out there, Ottawa County again, or what?
the Ottawa County ones, I haven't seen the announcement for. Andrea, I don't know if you've seen them. They usually do those in the winter, so I'll be looking out for those too. But these are for, it's a different group, the Michigan Association of Planning. They have trainings all over the state. So I'll make sure to post those.
For the land division, one that's coming up, in the paper, it gave this over 4-to-1 depth ratio thing. Was one of those a 60-foot lot?
Yeah, that's at the end of Justin. Believe it or not, Justin looks like it's not even connected to the rest of the property, but they are proposing to.
Is a 60-foot lot even legal anymore?
Not anymore, but that was a lot that was.
Grandfathered in, right?
It was dead end of Justin Street, so you just have that 60-foot length right at the end instead of having a cul-de-sac end. So then you're looking at the existing non-conforming width, adding some depth to it.
So is somebody gonna buy that and combine it with another lot?
That's exactly the proposal.
That's what's gonna happen.
Yep, so there's about 5 or 6 lots that are going to be involved in this. 3 of them have these kind of flags or triggers for zoning issues.
Is that on the east side of Kenny then?
Yes, yep.
Okay. So the basic issue is the ratio of width to depth?
Yes, yep.
What we're looking for. Cool.
That's right, yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Gonna have a what?
I'll let you know. I will be part of it.
all right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Or Andrea, I will not be here for the 23rd. That's 2 of us. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that. If you need an alternate.
Okay.
We can get Craig in.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Nothing else? We're all set?
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right. Sandra makes a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by who? Tom? Patrick? Oh, you again? Randy? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, we are adjourned.